A mis espaldas se encuentra Wall Street, el epicentro financiero del mundo. Ahí se transan las acciones de las compañías más valiosas y más innovadoras del planeta, incluidas las acciones de las compañías biotecnológicas, empresas que combinan ciencia y negocios. Hoy conoceremos a un reconocido inversionista en esta área. Él se llama Les Funtleyder.
En el corazón de Manhattan se encuentran las oficinas de E Squared Capital, donde me reúno con Les Funtleyder, uno de los inversionistas biomédicos más reconocidos de Estados Unidos, y que además es profesor de inversiones en salud de la Universidad de Columbia y autor de libros sobre este tema. Una de sus virtudes es que ha logrado destilar en forma simple la diferencia que existe entre las inversiones en salud y las inversiones tradicionales. Sin duda que los negocios biomédicos a primera vista se ven más complicados que los negocios tradicionales. Esto porque involucran entender muy bien la ciencia, requieren mucho capital, operan en mercados regulados y tienen mucha competencia, pero que, por otro lado, resultan muy atractivos para los inversionistas, ya que si se realizan correctamente, los retornos económicos son ampliamente superiores al de las inversiones tradicionales. De todo esto y más, conversaremos ahora con Les, quien por supuesto también tiene una interesante relación con nuestro país.
Well, I'm super excited to finally meet in person Les Funtleyder. He's the author of a very important book on healthcare investment that I've read many times, and now we are meeting here in Manhattan. Thank you for having us, Les.
Thank you for coming all this way.
I would like to start our conversation asking you about your story. I've known you for a while, and it's super inspiring. Can you share it with us?
Sure. I started life, I made my first stock investment at 12.
12 years
12
old.
years old, yes. And it was Amdahl. It was a computer company in the early 80s. And actually, I made money on it. But I also had a passion for science and healthcare. And so over time, I was able to combine my interests both in investing and in science and healthcare. And that's how I wound up here. I got my graduate degree in public health from Columbia, which allows me to evaluate both the scientific merits, the investment merits, and in a lot of cases, the reimbursement landscape or how things get paid for. And we think it's a nice combination.
And is it different, healthcare investing, than any other type of investments?
Absolutely. The scientific component is much more difficult here. Human physiology is sort of one of the few unknown areas still. There's still a lot to learn. So you do have to understand both the science and the money side of things. You can't, it's not like a regular business where you could just count the number of things that come off a factory line. It just doesn't work that way. And so, and the neat thing about healthcare investing is there's always some new development, and we're always on the cutting edge. It's never boring, and there's always something new.
But then, is it risky? What are the kind of risks and rewards of healthcare
Sure.
investing?
Well, I mean, the risks are we don't always understand biology, and drugs fail in clinical trials. That's why we have to do them. It's very competitive, obviously, because everybody is trying to do this same thing. It's very expensive, and so one place gets money, the other place doesn't. So again, it's complicated. On the reward side, in the U.S., healthcare is a $3.5 trillion a year industry.
3.5 trillion?
In the U.S., and another $3.5 trillion in the rest of the world. So you're talking about a $7 trillion annual industry. So in terms of rewards, they're pretty good. They're enough to go around, but you do have to balance that against the risk.
Wow. Biotech and pharmaceuticals sometimes are understood as something that is almost the same. But
Right.
I understand that they are not.
Right.
Or are they?
It's complicated. We differentiate biotech from pharma. When we say biotech companies don't make any money and they're burning cash, and pharmaceuticals are selling a drug and making revenue. Traditionally, biotech was considered to be the big molecules, right? The ones you needed to inject or infuse.
The antibodies.
Right, made usually in cells. However, over the years, for example, companies like Gilead became small molecule companies where they made pills. And a lot of the major pharma started getting into antibodies. So that distinction doesn't count anymore. So we just say, if you have revenue, you're a pharmaceutical company. If you're a development stage company, you're biotech. But everybody's got a different definition.
But at the end of the day, you evaluate them, you research them in a similar way.
Yes. Yes, in terms of developing pipeline. You go and you say, oh, is this drug going to work? You look at the clinical trials, you look at the science, you look at the population. Once it's on the market, you go back to more traditional investing techniques like discounted cash flow and some of the parts analysis and option valuation. But that's the usual stuff. The hard part is, understanding, will this drug work? Will this medical device work? Will the surgery work?
How do you at E Squared Capital value pre-revenue biotech companies? Let's say companies that are going from Series A round to Series B and onwards.
Okay, well, there are a number of different ways, and I'm sorry to say that it is more of an art than a science. The way we do it is we look at recreation value. So if we were a pharma company, how much would it cost to get the drug to this point? Whether it's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then we place an asset value on it. There are other ways to do it, including looking at the addressable market, discounting that back with a risk adjustment. Mm-hmm. So obviously phase 1 is much more risky than phase 2. Phase 2 is, so we'll use a market size risk adjusted. But our preference is just to do it by an asset value. But there are basically 3 ways to value any asset. It's cash flow, assets, and relative value. And so you can always look at another company that did the same thing and try to compare. But our preference is just to do it with recreation value. We find that's the best way. And that actually has an element of Warren Buffett-esque too, because if Warren Buffett was going to value biotech, which he'll never do because he doesn't invest in biotech, he would look at book value. Yeah. And so that's how we look at it.
What's your relationship to Chile or Latin America?
Well,
there's some
it
cool
is. Well,
it's
I had the unique privilege to join the board of a company called Hace Senior Living, which has significant operations in Chile. And I have been to Chile a number of times, and I've learned to really like the country. I hadn't been before I joined the board, and I realized that there's a vibrant healthcare culture and a vibrant economic culture that if I hadn't joined the board, I probably wouldn't have understood. So I am frequently down there, relatively speaking, to visit the Hace folks, and it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time, both on the scientific side, but also on the healthcare delivery side. Our biggest insurer in America, United Health, bought the biggest insurer in Chile. So we are seeing a convergence.
Our worlds are
converging. And so I'm glad that to be a part of it, and I actually think it's very exciting. And I don't think that this is my last investment in Chile.
Thank you, Les, for having us. It has been a pleasure. I enjoy your book very much, and it's a lovely office that you have here in Manhattan.
Well, thank you. And if you'd like, I'll sign the book for you.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Great.